Okay, my friends, we're going to solve more problems on bearing. This time around, we're going to look at, bearing in a different perspective. So it says the bearing of, that's the first question, the bearing of A from B. So a point A from a point B is 0.35 degree. Remember, we said that the generally accepted way of describing bearing is the 3-digit method. All right, so you see that 0.35 is just 35 degrees but represented in 3 digits. What is the bearing of B from A? Okay, that's our cardinal point. So from the question now, you see that we are at the point B. All right, so because you need to pay attention to that. So we see the bearing of A, that means the position of A from B. So you see that we are coming from B. That means we're at B now. It's 35 degrees. So if you can remember, from the north to the east is 90 degrees. So 35 degrees should be in the northeast direction. About something like this. We've come to A. So this point is A. So we just draw another cardinal there. Okay, so now we've drawn this cardinal for A. Now we are asked to find the bearing of B coming from A now. So if you can remember, for the bearing, we're always working with 3-digit bearing. And I said that in 3-digit bearing, the bearing of one point from another point is the angle that is turned from the north in the clockwise direction. So it must be from the north and it must be in the clockwise direction. So the bearing of B coming from A would be the angle from the north at A, turned until you get to that point, or rather until you get to that line that leads us back to B. So that's what they're asking us. So it's very different to ask the bearing of A from B and the bearing of B from A. So for the first part of the question, which was given, the bearing of A from B, I would like to read it this way. The position of A coming from B is 35 degrees. Now they're asking us what is the position of B now coming from A. So we need to find that angle there. So now one thing we must know is that if you consider this line, this east line from B and this west line from A, all right, you discover that they must be parallel to each other. So they are parallel to each other. So you see that this line that takes us from A to B and B to A, vice versa, is going to be kind of like a transversal. What I'm simply trying to say is that the angle 35 degree is alternate to this angle here. So 35 degree, it must be alternate to this angle, right? Alternate angles are equal. So that angle there is also going to be 35 degrees. So we have here as 35 degrees. So you need to take note of that. Okay. So we now know that this angle here is 35 degrees. Okay, now we know that all we need to do is now to add the 90 degrees from north to east. Recall 90 degrees, and then 90 degrees from east to south. So our bearing, so the bearing of B from A is going to be 90 degrees plus 90 degrees plus 35 degrees, and that will be the bearing. 90 plus 90, that's 180. 180 plus 20 from 35 will be 200. That's 215 total. So the bearing will be 215 degrees. Now it's already in 3 digits, so I don't need to add any zero since we already have 3 digits. So just be very careful. Try to understand the question. A from B is different from B from A. Take note. So let's look at another question there. Now this question says the bearing of Abuja from Lokoja is 150 degrees. What is the bearing of Lokoja from Abuja? Now you see that the bearing of Abuja from Lokoja must be different from the bearing of Lokoja from Abuja. So again, so where are we coming from? You see, we are coming from Lokoja. So let's use L to represent Lokoja. So put our cardinal for Lokoja. So we are at Lokoja now. They say that the bearing, coming from Lokoja to Abuja would be 150 degrees. So remember, from the north to the east is 90, from east to south relative to the north will be 180. So if that would be 180, see that Lokoja 150 degrees would be, in the southeast direction. So 150 will be something like this. So let's say that's 150. So now we need to do some calculation. So from the north, to that line that leads us to Abuja. So let's represent Abuja with A. We're going to draw a cardinal there shortly, but let's just do some calculations here. So the whole of this is 150 degrees from the question. Now, it is very important to always try to separate these angles. So if the whole of that is 150 degrees, I want to find what's the angle between the east and the line that leads us to Abuja. It's very important to find that. So if the whole of this is 150 degrees, if we subtract 150 from 90, if we subtract 90 from 150 rather, let's just get this one separately, because that angle obviously is 90 degrees. So if we subtract 90 from 150, we'll get the remaining angle there. Does it make some sense at all now? So this angle here would be 150 degrees minus 90 degrees. So, and that will give us 60 degrees, right? Yeah. It will give us 60 degrees. So we now know that the angle here would be 60 degrees. It's very important to do these calculations to help you, get everything straight on. So now we're going to put our cardinal at A. Abuja, I use A for Abuja. Okay, so that's what we have there now. Now remember alternate angles. So this side is this, that will be the west. So this is the west of A, north of A, east of A, and south of A. So you see that the angle formed, in the northwest direction of A must be alternate to this angle in the southeast of L, which is Lokoja. So this angle here must also be 60 degrees. The reason for that is alternate angles are equal. So you need to know that alternate angles are always equal. So use that to also get your answer. So remember, we're looking for the bearing of Lokoja from Abuja. So the bearing of Lokoja from Abuja, that's what we're looking for. So how do we get it? Remember, it is the angle that is turned from the north. So from Abuja, we go from the north until we get to that line, that leads us back to Lokoja. So remember, from the north to the east is 90 degrees, from east to south is 90 degrees, south to west is 90 degrees, and then we have an additional 60 degrees. That's this angle here. So total, we're going to have 90 degrees plus another 90 degrees plus another 90 degrees plus 60 degrees. 90 times 3, that's 270. Then 270 plus 60, that should be 330 degrees. So 330 degrees, and that will be the bearing of Lokoja from Abuja. Let's look at another question. I'd like for you to pause this video and try this question on your own, just to make sure that you're getting the concept. Okay, so the question says the bearing of Lagos from Jos is 322 degrees. What is the bearing of Jos from Lagos? Okay, so you see that we are coming from Jos. So we're going to use J to represent Jos. So we just put a cardinal there. So let's just put our cardinal point for Jos. So we are Jos now. So this is the north of Jos, this is the south of Jos. So 322 degrees, on which part should it be? Should it be in the northeast direction, or southeast, or southwest, or northwest? So from north to east is 90, east to south is 90, that's 180, south to west is 270. So it should be in the northwest direction, right? Because that's where we have from 270 to 360 degrees. So 322 degrees is in between 270 and 360, so it should be in that direction. All right, so you see that our angle is going to go up, so I might need to shift this my cardinal to the right. So let me shift it to the right a little. Okay, now that we've moved it, so let's draw the direction for, from Jos to Lagos. So I think that's enough. So recall that the angle that is formed from the Jos to the line is, from the clockwise north. From the question we have 322 degrees. So let's draw our cardinal for Lagos. So we're at Lagos now. So let's put a cardinal there. Okay, so that's what we have. Now, we remember that we need to do some little calculation, at that first point where we are just. So if the whole of this is 322 degrees, what do you think that this angle here would be? This angle that I'm putting in black now. You need to get that angle because that angle I just colored black will be alternate to this angle here. All right, so we need to find the value. So you know that from the north turning to the west is 270 degrees, of course. So to get this small angle, we're going to do 322 minus 270. So that would give us this angle here. 322 minus 370, that will give us 52. So this angle here is 52 degrees. That means this angle here will also be 52 degrees. So it's very important to do these little calculations and then you're good to go. Now, the bearing, remember the question is we should find the bearing of Jos from Lagos. So we should find the bearing of Jos if we are coming from Lagos. So the bearing of Jos from Lagos will be equal to, remember it's from Lagos, we're going to turn from the north in the clockwise direction. So from north to east is 90 degrees, don't forget that. So we have 90 degrees plus, you see that angle there, that's 52 degrees until we get to the line that takes us back to Jos. So let's add 90 plus 52 is 142 degrees, and that will be the bearing of Jos from Lagos. So I believe that the concept of bearing is more clearer to you. So it's not very much complicated. You just need to be very careful in calculating your angles, and also remember that one of the most important laws that hold here is the law of alternating angles. So